afterwards, he never came back. I contacted him and he said that, it wasn't what he thought it was going to be. So he was, and then my authority at that time said it was probably the worst day to invite such a person. And I thought, I need to remember that. This man was so close to joining and I made a mistake. And looking back, I thought, I should have known, but I didn't. So we tried to learn by mistakes, and because every endeavour is covered by some kind of fault, then we've got plenty of opportunity for learning. Every day we've got opportunities to learn. And sometimes we may even get upset with ourselves, like, I never seem to learn, keep doing the same thing. So that's a blessing in disguise. If our Maya is the same all the time, then we get a chance of learning. We keep on falling into the same trap, so we should begin to actually see, okay, before I fell into this trap this deep, what was the stage before that, and what was before that? So then we begin to learn how to be vigilant to prevent the situation. If every time we fell into Maya, it was a different thing, then we'd have no chance. But we have our own attachments. We've laid a trap for ourselves. Just like this lesson, the disciple runs into the temple. Oh, Guru Maharaj, Maya won't let me go. I'm so troubled by Maya, she won't let me go. So the spiritual master immediately stands up, runs out of the temple, and the disciple thinks, where's he gone? Have I disturbed him? He's just ran away. Maybe I'm just too much of a burden. So he follows the spiritual master and he sees him outside the temple and he's embracing a tree, shouting, let me go, let me go. So the spiritual master taught the disciple very practically, Maya is not holding on to you, you're holding on to Maya. And you're shouting, let me go. So this is what we do. We think, Maya's given me so much trouble, but we've accepted this Maya with open arms. And Maya is called Maya because she is Maya. She is illusion. And we think something to be something, but it's actually not. Therefore, Prabhupada translates Maya as that which is not. We think it's something, but it's actually something else. The example of the rope and the snake is given. So if there's a snake on the ground and someone says, careful, there's a snake, you think, no, it's just a rope, and you just kick it, then you might find it's a snake and it bites you. So there's so many detailed instructions given here, such as after eating you should not go out in the street without having washed your mouth, hands and feet. And we see this Vedic culture is there in so many different religions. If you look in biblical times, then people would wash their hands and feet before eating. This is typical natural hygiene. In Islamic culture, it's also there. In the Vedic culture, it's there. And Vedic culture is a culture which was spread throughout the world, so the more we understand that, then the more we'll see remnants of it. I remember in 1988, we first went to the Western Isles on Sankirtan, and some people were not very Vedic at all. They were slamming the door in our face and shouting nasty things at us from the other side of the door. And I thought, okay, well, at least it saves us wasting time with these guys. You've made it clear you're not interested. So it was a blessing. But then there was other people we went to, and they would open the door, probably a bad connection, and they'd welcome us into the house, give you a seat, and they ask you if you'd like something to drink, like would you like a cup of tea or a scone, or no, we're a scone, we don't take scones, or a drink of water or a glass of juice, and they'd be, what can I do for you? Where are you from? And this is exactly Vedic culture. I was remembering even at that time, I thought, this is so nice. Some of these people, they're not so fanatical about the religious, but they're actually performing Dharma. And you see, some of these people who are so fanatical about the religion, they're actually not very happy because they're forcing themselves into a situation, trying to force others into it. And it's niyamagraha, too much attachment to the rules and regulations. And then when they give it up, they go to the other side. This is called bogatyag. And then it's filled with hypocrisy as well. So they try to circumvent scriptural rules and regulations just by not following the spirit of the instruction, but by following the letter of the instruction. Like, okay, you're not allowed to go and buy alcohol on a Sunday. So what do? Buy it on a Saturday and keep it in the house, and then you can drink it on the Sunday. So you can't circumvent, scriptural junctions just by doing a hiranyakashipu on it all. Let me never be killed in the sky or in the land, or in the day or the night, or indoors or outdoors. If Hiranyakashipu couldn't outsmart Krishna, then our little puny efforts at trying to make our own version of things. So we have to really be open to understand, am I following properly? And if we're following properly, the result will be there. Just like Aditi, she's given this very strict path with so many stringent rules, and the result will be there if she follows it. But the result that she's looking for is not the result which will come, because Kashyapa Muni is so intelligent, he knows that she will become purified. I don't know if you've seen, there's an old video of Tamal Krishna Maharaj preaching in Fiji, and it's called, it's either God's Competitor, I think it's God's Competitor, yeah. There was 2 lectures he gave in the same place around the same time. One was called Gods, Demigods, and Incarnations. One's called God's Competitor. So God's Competitor was about, basically he's preaching Krishna consciousness, and then someone asked him a question, do you know such and such, Swami? Oh, such a sly, sorry, not such a sly thing. Satya Sai Baba. I almost said something there. Freudian slip. And he says, so of course, Tamal Krishna Maharaj had heard about him, but he cleverly says, well, who is this person? What's his philosophy? This is typical. If someone comes up and says, do you believe in such and such? You say, well, what's their philosophy? And if they don't have any philosophy, then, how can we believe in them if they don't have any philosophy? So he said, oh, well, I don't know, but, people say he can do this and he can do that. And he said, what can he do? He can do some miracles. What kind of miracles can he do? Well, he can produce some ashes. And he said, so if I go down to the crematorium, there's a lot of ashes there. Does that make the funeral director God? No, he said, but he can produce some gold. He says, okay, so if he produces some, how much gold can he produce? How many grams? And he says, how much is it for a gram of gold? He said, oh, but he can also produce some fruit, some apples. And how many apples? Like 2, 4, 6. Can he produce 108 apples? Can he produce enough apples to feed the starving multitudes in the world? No. So he can produce like maybe 6 apples. He says, so how much is a bag of 6 apples down the market? Oh, 50 cents. So for 50 cents, you can become God. Damn cheap God. Of course, Tamal Krishna Maharaj is very direct, uncompromising, and very intelligent. He said, and he says to this person, I can guarantee you that if you chant Hare Krishna 6 months, I'll give you $10,000 if you do not become Krishna conscious. So he gave this challenge to him. And I don't know whether he did it or not, but Maharaj has so much faith that if someone chants Hare Krishna, then whatever they're being deluded by, if they chant Hare Krishna in the association of devotees, and they hear Srimad Bhagvatam in the association of devotees, then all the inauspiciousness, which are basically just distractions from going back to Godhead, then they will be reduced to nil. We think there's so many things in the material world. Sometimes we think there's something out there for us, but ultimately, we have to come to the point where we realize there's nothing out there for us. So Maharaj was given this opportunity for the person to actually really get in touch with God and to see what it's like to be a spiritual person. And not just some trickery, someone produces some apples, gold or ashes, and then we think they're God because they get a funny hairdo or something. And they make some pseudo spiritual statements, like one of them, same one actually, he would say, love is love is love. And it's like, oh, that's so really spiritual. It doesn't mean anything. It's just like word jugglery. Prabhupada warns us against this word jugglery. And they just pose very nicely. But ultimately, they're not going to deliver themselves or deliver the dependents. And this is condemned very strongly in the Ishopanishad, that one who leads others into the darkness of it, was it? Does anyone remember that verse? Yeah, those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. That's what it is. Enter into, was it? Yeah. Yasmin sarvani bhutani admaiva buddvijanata tatakoma kashoka ikadvama pachata. No, that's a different one. No, that's Atmajanaha. Yeah, the killer of the soul, whoever he may be, must enter into darkest region of ignorance. No, that's another similar verse, but so Prabhupada here is condemning impersonalists or those who are pseudo-spiritualists, who are feigning that there's some kind of elevated soul, and simply cheating, and they neither can deliver themselves nor their followers. The Prabhupada condemns them, but he condemns their followers even more so. You think, oh, but they may just be innocent, being misled. But Prabhupada doesn't let them off. Ignorance is no excuse. So in other words, we have to be sincere in our desire. Otherwise, as Lord Buddha says, we be careful what you desire, you might get it. And then later on, you think, oh, perhaps I didn't want this. Like Dhruva Maharaj, he wanted something, and it wasn't spiritual, but he approached the right person. He approached Krishna. So he was given a great kingdom called Dhruvaloka, planet, the pole star. But he said, oh, I don't want it. I don't need it. And they said, that's okay. You can have it now because you're not going to, your purpose has changed. So it doesn't matter whether you have it or not. So this is the position of a devotee, that we're trying to spread the glories of Krishna and the Guru Parampara. And by doing this, we are giving up the path of trying to spread our own glories. When we try to spread our own glories, then sometimes Krishna kindly will just make it known that we're not so glorious out of his kindness. Sometimes we get embarrassed, or we see her doing something which we think, well, why did I see her do that, And Krishna's just bringing us down a peg. I remember there was a couple of girls in Dundee used to come to a program. One of them eventually became an initiated devotee, but at one point they were coming regular, and then they stopped coming. So we met them on the street because we had a regular program in Dundee. And they said, oh, you've stopped coming to the program, what happened? And they says, oh, when I came to the program, I just felt so dirty. I just felt so contaminated. I said, well, that's not a bad thing. That's just part of self-awareness, realizing that which is not you, but you're identifying with that. So they started coming back again. So sometime in the midst of devotees, we may feel contaminated. And that's because we're becoming aware of something which is not favorable for our spiritual advancement in our own mind and heart. And that's okay. Just look at it and realize, well, okay, this is something I've identified with, but it's not me. It's something I can actually leave behind. I can give up identifying with that. It might take some time, or it might not, but at least the process works. And of course, it's not like that all the time. Sometimes we may be feeling a bit introspective, where we're not exactly sure of ourselves, so we're not feeling too comfortable. But other times, then that cloud will pass and the sun will be out and we'll be enjoying the bliss again and again. So this is one of the first instructions Krishna gives, is to learn to tolerate. The winter and summer seasons are coming and going, and the happiness and distress are coming and going because they're a result of our past actions. And Prahlad Maharaj says that our happiness and distress is already chalked out in this life according to our past activities. Sometimes people make big arrangements to enjoy. Like for some people, their biggest day of their life is their wedding. And then how many of it turns out as a disaster? They spend like a year planning it, and spend a fortune getting all the right people, getting them sitting in the right places, make sure these ones don't sit next to each other because there'll be a punch-up. And so many, this is on the menu, blah, blah, blah. And then what happens? The band doesn't show up. So there's no music. So they got to get the phone out, and someone was just recently telling me that they had spent a lot of money on a wedding, and the band or the disco didn't turn up. They take the money. There's a lot of people who do these things, they con weddings, people who are planning weddings, and they take a lot of money for venues and all the rest of it, and they realise the person had no access to the venue, they had no access to planning the meals or anything like that. So anyway, we make, and this is us throughout our whole life, we make so much plan to enjoy, but there's no guarantee we will enjoy just because we make a plan. And sometimes we do. Maya will give us a little thing, oh, come and enjoy, that's nice. And then we think, oh yes, sounds good, let me give it a try. But then we don't enjoy. Like if you listen to one lecture Prabhupada was given in 26 Second Avenue in 1966 or 7, he's giving a talk, and then you hear the ice cream van in the background. Deedle, 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 deedle. He says, come and enjoy, and I will kick you. This is Maya. And it's our nature to enjoy, Prabhupada says, but we don't know how to. Our attempts to enjoy simply end up in more tears, end up in more suffering. So by a little austerity and giving up pursuing our own sense enjoyment and pursuing Krishna's enjoyment by taking on his purpose, Brahmanda Bhamti Koni Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Beach. So the living entity is wandering through so many different species, through different planets, throughout the universe, trying to find some meaning in life, and trying to enjoy, and still not finding meaning. And we're trying to squeeze some meaning or squeeze some enjoyment out of it. But we only find real meaning and enjoyment when we apply ourselves to the process of Krishna consciousness, which is going to reawaken our original state of consciousness, which is pure and which is similar in nature to Krishna's, eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. And in the process of removing that covering, then there'll be ups and downs. And therefore, it's necessary that we're patient and continue to practice. And we experience, when we just stick with it, we can make this experiment, the process works. Sometimes we think whatever difficulty we're going through is the most difficulty we've ever had. It seems like that every time, when the cloud comes along, oh, this is the darkest cloud, I need to find somewhere sunny. But just wait and it'll pass. Just waiting means continuing with the practice. Not that we just sit and wait for time to pass, but the time pass while we're practicing Krishna consciousness means that we're not accruing further reactions. People try to mitigate their suffering by engaging in something which is going to compound the problem by laying down the path for more suffering. So we we can understand from this verse that even material, whether one's intentions are material or spiritual, then if we want to achieve something, then there has to be some regulation. I was just listening to a little short video of Shiva Ramanj the other day, and he was saying that without discipline we cannot achieve anything. Even in the material world, you don't think that these guys who have made a success of themselves in the material world in terms of gained fame or fortune or whatever, it didn't just fall into their lap. Even though it's their karma, if they just sat in the house and did nothing, it's not just going to come walking in the door. They have to make some endeavor. And therefore, well, to speak of spiritual, the gain which we're going to gain from this Krishna conscious movement is the highest benefit, it's the highest gain. And the Lord couldn't make it any easier for us. So although it may be difficult, certainly the difficulty we experience of going through the ups and downs of Krishna consciousness are temporary, and the gains are eternal. Once we went through this difficulty of anartha nivritti, giving up unwanted things, well, first of all, understanding what are the unwanted things and accepting. Sometimes people point out, or we see ourselves, there's unwanted things in me. If we can recognize that, just like earlier on, people were feeling that somewhat contaminated, this is okay, this is part of the process of recognizing the unwanted things, and then begin to see them as being hurdles on the path of self-realization. But by continuing the process, then in due course of time, remaining fixed on the goal and continuing with our regulated devotional service, then the hurdles start to shrink and we become more expert at jumping the hurdles. And then once we're past anartha nivritti and we're into the higher stages, then we're on the home run. We just have to keep going in the right direction, same direction. So this is a process that we make that experiment. It's okay, here's some difficulty come along. Let me not change anything. Let me just continue and see what happens. Change, change, change. This is mode of passion. This is... We have to, I remember one devotee wanted to change something in the Pujari department, and the Shankhavacharya GBC said that change is inauspicious in the deity department. It's mode of passion. So impassion leads to ignorance. So we want to be situated in the mode of goodness, and therefore our understanding and our happiness will be lasting. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves chasing the will-o'-the-wisp, just like in these marshy environments. They have some kind of gases which look like some kind of subtle entity. Maybe there's some kind of phenomena which is somewhat mysterious or attractive, and we go chasing it. But if you go and chasing it in the marshy situation, you might fall into some swamp and drown. So we have to recognize the danger of the attraction of Maya and very vigilantly remain fixed on the path. So these various instructions which Kashyapa Muni is giving to Diti, they're meant for her purification, and they're meant for her to perform some discipline so that she can bring the mind under control, and they're meant to elevate her from the lower modes of passion and ignorance to the mode of goodness. So, for example, when you eat, if you don't wash your hands and feet and mouth, of course, it's not always possible to do that, but at least we wash our hands and our mouth. Otherwise, we're continually in a muchi condition. One shouldn't come into the temple having eaten and not washed their hands. There's so many instructions given in the Nectar of Devotion. One shouldn't come into the temple having passed stool and not having had a bath. So many other different rules. And sometimes the reasons are there, they're apparent, sometimes they're not apparent, but at least we follow them anyway. And then sometimes we may find later on the reasons for it. And here some instructions are given that she shouldn't leave the house unless she's grave and she's sufficiently covered. Shouldn't have going out in the evening with loose hair, because that indicates something, indicates that she's, in this culture, indicates that she's available. If someone goes out with loose hair, or properly decorated with ornaments, that means that she's also someone's wife. So if someone goes out without indication that they're married and their hair is loose, etc., then that would indicate that the person is they're not married, or that they're looking for some good time or something like that, as they call it. A good time gal. So he's given her a very strict, of course, not all Vaishnavas, and especially in the world, Western world, not all Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis follow all these things, but still, we have to make sure that whatever we're doing is not detrimental to us being able to follow our vows and keep to the path of devotional service. And being liberal is okay to some extent, but if we're so liberal, I remember one time when born-again Christian gave me some good advice. I was in Edinburgh and he came up and he says, I told the story before where they were causing some problem amongst the devotees, and I went there and I showed some interest and they kind of backed off. So I'm very interested in the Bible, I'd like to read, you get any pamphlets, but I'm doing this just now, I'm a Hare Krishna just now, so, I'm not going to change overnight, I've been doing it for some years, so, please don't disturb me, let me come to my own decision. Oh yes, no problem, that's fine. They didn't want to disturb me. And they says, but don't be so open-minded that you go to hell. And I was thinking, good advice, it doesn't apply, but I'll take it where it does apply. So being liberal was okay, but if it means that we're going to compromise our principles, then it's not a good thing. We can alter things according to Desha Kalapatra, and sometimes we may engage people in quite unconventional ways for their benefit, but we always have to be minding that it's for their benefit, and it's not going to entangle us, and it's not going to be misleading them neither. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagvatam, then Narada Muni was preaching to Vyasadeva, wasn't he? You remember what he was saying? Vyasadeva had covered different subjects, but he'd left out what? So he was trying to gradually elevate the people in general by giving them some little baby steps. But and that's sometimes what we do with some of our programs. But if we spend all our time just cultivating people in baby steps, and we're missing out people who could become devotees. For example, I won't mention which temple, but there was one person went to a certain temple in Britain, and he wanted to join. He wanted to leave everything and just go and join and become a devotee. And the devotees at the temple says, no, you shouldn't do that. You should go and get yourself an education. Because he wasn't even in university at the time, this devotee. And then you should get yourself a job, and etc. Because that was the kind of mood that some of them had. So he went to another temple and just joined. So if somebody is in the mood, these things are okay for people who are maybe students or householders, etc. Then they can be engaged in such a way, for the long term, and we see that works for them. But for someone who's keen and they've read the books, then you want to give them a chance. And if they have no ties, the person already had no ties, so what's the point of getting them already entangled, So this would be a case of, well, someone's attracted to Krishna consciousness, they have no ties, they want to join the temple. Why would you not give them a chance to do that? At the same time, you've got another side. You've got perhaps someone who's a householder with wife or husband and kids, and they want to leave everything and join the temple. Then you say, no, be Krishna conscious from your own situation. In the science of self-realization, there was this Christian priest, I forget what his name was, but he was so taken by Srila Prabhupada's preaching that he says, so what should I do? Should I come and join you? And Prabhupada says, no, you preach love of God from your own circumstances, from your own position. So we can see that Prabhupada is very liberal. And also with George Harrison, he could have just made him an initiated devotee, shaved up in the ashram, gave up everything. But he was smart to see the better engagement of George Harrison was to call him, you're already son of Hari, you don't need initiated. And you're doing so much preaching. So Prabhupada was thinking, what is best for the individual? What is best for the movement in general? And this person could do so much service, he's going to get so much blessings by Krishna, and he did. And so did so many other people on account of his service. So this is the opportunity and the challenge we have is to try to engage ourselves and in others in the best way possible, and to be vigilant with ourselves and also to be vigilant with others as to see if something is actually the best engagement for them, or can we think of another engagement? Perhaps somebody's on the street and they're doing nothing in Sankirtan, but you send them round the doors and they're doing good, or vice versa. Or someone struggling on the street, but then they come back and they're great pujari, or someone's struggling with pujari and they can go and do some preaching. So there's so many different activities we can try to see what is, where can we really blossom. And in any case, just to remain steady in our devotional service, this is the message of Bhagavad Gita, to remain fixed in our duty. And if we do that, then ultimately we will attain the highest benediction, Prema Pumarta Mahan, the highest benediction, which is love of God. So this is the intention of Kashyapa Muni, that his wife, who's like a disciple in this regard, he's engaging her in such a way for her own benefit. And he's thinking, either way she goes here, she's going to get benefited. He's very clever like that. So we'll just stop there. If anyone's got any comments, questions, or corrections, please. Pancha.
That Vyasadeva, he's not giving people Krishna, and he's also not happy in the process. And Narada Muni, he says, the people are naturally inclined to enjoy, and you're encouraging them in the name of religion, and this is actually condemned.
It's called what?
Kaitava
Dharma, cheating religion. And you might think that's quite strong, but it's cheating them of their highest welfare. Sorry, carry on.
It's also the fact that Vyasadeva is not happy. He's not satisfied. He wants to talk about Krishna.
Yeah. And this is there because Vyasadeva is the literal incarnation of the Lord, but it's there to teach us a lesson. That even, such elevated souls. And Prabhupada gives a story of the one, don't know if it was called Hindu or Indian or Vaishnava, but let's say he was an Indian businessman, and he was traveling. Although he was a devotee, he was traveling, and he was very hungry, so he knocked on someone's door and he says, "My dear sir, do you have any food?" He said, "Yes, please come in. We're about to take our dinner." So they sat down, and there wasn't much food. They were quite a poor family. There wasn't much food to share, but they shared it anyway. And at the end of the meal, he said, "Is there any more? I'm still a bit hungry." He says, "No, I'm afraid that's all we've got." And he said, "Oh, by the way, what caste are you?" And he says, "We're not any caste, we're Mohammedan, we're Muslim." So the thing was that if a Hindu eats in the home of a Mohammedan, then the caste is spoiled and they have to actually accept to become Mohammedan. So in this way, it was considered that the person lost their caste and still went hungry. So they're neither satisfied with eating and they lost their position. So this is what we have to be careful. If we're going to take too big a risk to save some people, then we may lose ourselves as well. And because it's a willing process, we also have to be a little bit detached, where we make an endeavour to give Krishna consciousness to people, but we also have to remember that it's a willing process, so if they don't want to take to it, then what can we do? We can't blame ourselves for someone else being unwilling. We can blame ourselves if we haven't tried to keep them on the path or bring them on the path. But if someone is not willing, then probably it's difficult to engage in devotional service, but it's so much more difficult to engage others. But at the same time, there's so much more reward and blessing if we try to engage others. And by try to engage others means that we have to be of at least that character ourselves. Just like when we're given class, often we realise during the day we're getting held to account of what we spoke about during the class, and sometimes devotees don't want to give class just in case. Is that okay? Yeah.
You mentioned at the start that gentleman was coming to the Namahata, and then you took him to the manor at the wrong situation. So I'm just wondering, it's like, Krishna's in control, but at the same time we've got like a desire to bring people towards Krishna, and if we make like mistakes in that endeavor, and therefore prohibiting people from getting to Krishna, is this Krishna's plan? Are these people actually not ready, or is this our incompetency?
Well, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that it's very difficult to understand the intricacies of action and reaction, so we shouldn't try to. So where do we draw the line? Because we could say, well, who was involved in all this? There was myself, there was the guy, there was his wife, there was his friends. Was it he took bad association by listening to them? Was it me that invited him at the wrong time? It would never be my intention to invite him, and him going away, feeling discouraged. So whatever the situation is, whatever brought it about, we at least try to learn from the situation which has arisen. And who knows whether he was sincere enough. If he was sincere enough, he may have seen through what was... I don't think it was him himself who was seeing it as a commercial enterprise, but his wife and friends were seeing an opportunity to just show him a different sign of it. Whereas if he'd have came on his own and I wasn't doing service, perhaps it'd have been different. He'd have seen it through different eyes, but he was not seeing it through the eyes of Shastra or through the eyes that a devotee sees it through. But he's seen it through the eyes of materialistic people who were very concerned that he was going to give up the family life and leave them behind.
Sorry, we was telling us we were at Jagannath, and they were having a gulab eating competition, and this devotee that won the competition threw up, but it was right in front of Srila Prabhupada's Murti in the temple room. So they were cultivating this really high-class South Indian Brahmin, and he stood up and walked out, and Dasa Swami saw him walking out. He thought, that's the last we're going to see of him, And about 20 minutes later, he just came in, sat down, and carried on taking his prasadam. So then Swami went over. He says, everything okay? He said, yeah. He said, I saw you left. He says, yeah. And he said, I went out, and I was walking down outside the temple room. He said, and I just got the realization that this Krishna consciousness, there's no material disqualification. So the living entity may come up against something, and then if he's not very sincere, he's got his excuse for not carrying on in Krishna consciousness, Because it's only 50% our fault. Something goes wrong and the person goes away. It's half our fault, but it's half his fault as well. So if he's 51% wanting to be Krishna conscious, he can overturn the 50% of somebody else.
Yeah, especially if it's a genuine mistake. Before we had Krunabhavan, we stayed in a chalet park over by Linlithgow. And we invited various people to the Sunday feast. We do Sankirtan, and then we'd get people to come to Linlithgow train station. We'd pick them up and take them to the chalet. We'd have Sunday program. And there was a couple of guys from Paisley who they were kind of interested, but they were kind of dope heads. And Prabhupada did say that those who smoke marijuana are enemies because they're envious. They associate with the mode of ignorance, so they can't really see spiritual values clearly. So anyway, we made a mistake. We hadn't even noticed it because we had made a big endeavour to make a nice Sunday feast, and we got some box from the supermarket and lined it with paper towels to put all the puris in. But one of these guys noticed it was a box which had contained some non-vegetarian foodstuff in it. Now, we didn't notice that, and it was just an honest mistake for somehow or another. We're just in our enthusiasm, we didn't see, there's a suitable size box, let's take that. We didn't see there was something on the outside. So they became so critical and they gave up Krishna consciousness on account of that, but that was just their excuse, because we said it was an honest mistake, it will never happen again, thanks for pointing that out, etc. But it wasn't good enough. So that was the excuse they were looking for. And sometimes people are looking for excuses because it's not an easy path to stick to. So that's a good point I hope she brought up there, that we can't blame ourselves. At the same time, we shouldn't just be callous about it. Only half what? Last one then.
So I just wondered when you were saying that it'll pass, it was just a comment that Rupa Goswami is saying we have to be patient, but he does say we have to be enthusiastic and we have to be confident. So we can everyone can be patient. Of course, it's good that if while you're being patient, you don't go away from Krishna consciousness. That's definitely good. But what's even better is that while you're waiting and being patient, that you can continue on being enthusiastic and confident.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because all these principles are required, not just one of them. So not that we just suffer and wait on time passing, but we have to engage ourselves in such a way that we we remain enthusiastic, and we're confident that Krishna's hands there.
Yeah, I was thinking as well when you were saying that after the first time that it passes, then you will be more inclined to be enthusiastic and confident because you know that the same thing is going to happen again. So the longer you stay around, the more chance you've got of being enthusiastic and confident. It was just a quick question about Aditi, that did she become purified because she was following her husband, or did she become purified because those principles are scientific?
Yeah, well, both, because she's following her husband, who is her authority, and because she's following the path which he gave, then she made advancement. If she was simply following her husband, but he gave her some other detrimental path, then that wouldn't have been good for her or him. So therefore, the spiritual master must be yad yad achariti shrishtas tattati vitarojana yat praman kruti lokastad anivartati. Whatever actions a great man performs, common men follow in his footsteps, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, the whole world pursues. So both in words and deeds, and by following such a person, then we get the blessings. It's going to go in the key. Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagvatam ki, Sisi Kuntam Apishach ki, Nitai Gaur Premande.
His Grace Prabhupada Prana Prabhu ki.